This is the Neurosurgery Podcast.
Well, welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. One of the great things about coming to an annual meeting is you run into old friends. I'm pleased to introduce Babak Kateb. Babak?
Pleasure. Good to see you, my friend.
We've known each other back to days at USC quarter century.
Well, I know, 26 years ago.
Yeah. But you've been very busy. You've been doing some very exciting things that I will say, maybe it's like neurosurgery adjacent, right? It's
Correct.
right there where we need to be. You founded the International Society for Brain Mapping.
Correct. And
now,
the foundation as well, yes.
The foundation, now
Yes.
it's the Society for Brain Mapping and Technology. Okay.
Therapeutics.
Therapeutics,
Yeah.
sorry. So tell us a little about how this got started and what it's all about.
Well, I was with Dr. Wang at USC, and back when we started a small conference in collaboration with NASA JPL and Caltech and USC, and we brought in engineers, biomedical chemists and scientists and neurosurgeons in order to address neurological disorders from different angles. So that developed to what's now Society for Brain Mapping and Therapeutics. We are a multi-specialty association, but also in 2008 we got into policy and advocacy, and I was one of the advisors to President Obama for Brain Initiative, and we got into policy and advocacy. We have an arm in DC. We have a brain mapping day annually, congressional briefing.
So multi-specialty mean like neurology, neurosurgery, psychiatry, neuroradiology, something like that? Okay.
Correct, and engineering.
And engineering. And let me just ask for the ignorant people, we know where Broca's area is, right? The brain's mapped. Why do we need any more mapping? Like tell the audience who don't know much about the brain.
Sure.
Why map the brain?
Well, imagine a Google map.
Okay.
You get a snapshot of Earth, and that's your MRI. You zoom down on cities, that's your functional MRI. You look at the city connectors to streets, that's brain connectomics. And then you zoom down on the streets, you can see the cars, which are cells, and basically people in the car are subcellular level. So anything from Earth to people, anything from imaging all the way to nanoscale. But this map changes, map of the city changes, map of the brain changes. So therefore, we need to bring technologies from other disciplines, like a nanoneurosurgery, like quantum computing and supercomputing, to be able to better understand the brain function and structure.
Yeah, let's get into that, because for people who don't really know, they think that it's like Brodmann's areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this part of the brain is language, and that part of the brain is vision, and it's like Huberman says this nucleus is responsible for anger. But you have a deeper understanding. The brain doesn't work like that, right? It's not
Correct.
like there's like individual parts of the brain that are just put together, right?
Correct.
It's much more complicated, and it changes probably.
Absolutely, and the same thing with the spine, actually.
Yeah.
So the brain connectome and pathway makes us different, as you know. We all have the same brain structure, okay, but our brain functions differently. Somebody could be a Mozart, the other person could be a great surgeon like you, but the brain connectomics is something that is shifting and changing, and understanding of that requires different tools. Some tools are developed, some tools are underdeveloped, but some tools are not developed yet. So the value of bringing surgeons with scientists and engineers together is just identifying the areas of unmet need, and really basically try to spin off new ideas, companies, and technologies, which we have done at SBMT.
I mean, reframed another way, it almost sounds like you're trying to develop an understanding of who we are as individuals and as humans, right?
Correct.
And so, but you as an entity, right? And what you've built now, it doesn't stand inside of four walls or on a street like a university, right?
Correct.
It's somewhat decentralized in a way,
Absolutely.
just like the brain.
Yeah, I think there is like a private academic program,
I see.
private and academic, because we have to bring industry together. But in our convention, we also bring venture philanthropists. We also bring VCs and private equity funds, because we see a value in bringing science, technology, policy together with investment. And we have the brain capital, even in AANS, an amazing organization. First time I was here was 26 years ago. They held it in the same city.
Yeah.
At that time, I was with Dr. Keith Black at Cedars. But in 26 years, you would think we could have achieved better treatment for brain cancer. We haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think using quantum computing and supercomputing will help us to take a look at the clinical trials that we have failed at.
Yeah.
Get that data and then basically see, okay, these are not to-do list. What is to-do list?
Right.
So, and this is where the power of quantum computing, supercomputing come together. And this is where the AI and the big data analytics come together.
So is the US still the leader in this area?
Yes and no. Yes, we still have the largest quantum computer in national labs, which actually collaborating with us. No, we are losing that edge to China, and I think because of obviously lack of investment in science and more investment in other wars and stuff. So, but I think we have the brain capital.
Yeah.
We have the capabilities, and I'm actually here to extend the hand of collaboration to AANS because we have to join forces. We can't work in silos. And over 24 years, we have built a network of about 100,000 scientists, physicians globally. And we also got involved in the G20 summit. And 13 years ago, we started what's called Neuroscience 20. And that includes brain, mental health, and spine, which basically trying to bring policymakers, health ministers, and we bring technology gurus, I would say CEOs, and basically solve the cost of neurological disorders to the world economy, which we published that is about 16 trillion pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Cost to the US economy is 1.5 trillion pre-pandemic, and almost 1/3 of that is all Alzheimer and dementia. So we are going to hit a tsunami of neurological disorders.
Wow.
And we are not prepared from the budgetary standpoint and also from the technology standpoint.
You're talking about something like 5% of GDP.
Yes.
Wow. It's phenomenal in the problem it presents, but it's also phenomenal in the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And the pressing need.
Yeah. Imagine you're a CEO of a company that wants to disrupt a $1.5 trillion market in the US or $16 trillion in globally. And it's possible, but only possible if we cross-discipline. If even different disciplines going their own way, psychiatry, neurology, neurosurgery, engineering, they don't meet. So we are trying to close the gap. So what does a neurosurgeon know that a neurologist doesn't know, or vice versa, or what does a nanotechnologist know that you and I don't know?
Yeah.
So how do we close that gap? And because of our conferences, we have published several inaugural textbooks. One of them a textbook of nanoneurosurgery. And if you remember, when we were at USC together, I established collaboration with NASA. If you remember, at that time, 26 years ago, we said infrared thermography is helpful. If you remember, you were on a clinical trial with me, that we can use optical spectroscopy to detect brain tumors intraoperatively. At that time, we were talking about, you and I talking about, how can we actually bring nanotechnology and bring nano drugs. So, and that's where the NASA came in and helped.
So tell us about your meeting then. You have a meeting once a year, is that right?
We have a meeting once a year. Okay. This is our 24th annual back-to-back. And we're delighted to have you on board.
So when's the next meeting?
Well, there are two meetings.
Okay.
The meeting that I want to get you more involved is the G20 Summits Neuroscience 20. That's Miami. So, and that's a much more think tank.
Okay.
Because we're in that meeting, we are looking at the cost of neurological disorders to the world economy. Let's say, I give you an example. In China, they lose 1 million people per year to neurotrauma.
Is that right?
Yeah. So there's a massive
1 million people?
Yeah, because there are 1.5
from accidents.
1.5 billion. So you can imagine, and the Chinese are basically trying to reduce the neurotrauma issues. So that's just one example.
Wow.
Now, in the US, we have 5.5 million people with Alzheimer and dementia, and the cost of that is approaching to $1 trillion. You know, I was just talking to Dr. Barry Baumel at the University of Miami, and he was saying that. So I think we got to step back as doctors and scientists, and this is the grassroots, AANS, SBMT.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to educate each other, but education is good, but not good without a proper policy.
Yeah.
And having a proper policy in place that, okay, now we're educated among ourselves, we have to go to US Congress and tell them, hey, this is the cost. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
And that's what we want to work with you in a variety of different areas. Even to give you another example, why don't we have a brain screening? We have prostate screening, we have breast screening, we have lung screening. Why don't we have brain screening?
You're talking about imaging modality or
everything, like
psychological screening or testing?
Testing, basic questionnaires to CT scan.
I think people are scared. You talk to several of the presidents; they've been, and I'm not taking the party side. They don't want to get screened, right?
But imagine, well, what if we can actually make them better perform? There are technologies here that allow better. If athletes are using it for better performance, why can't presidents or anybody else use it?
I love that you're so meta, because we know you're going to strike gold somewhere, in the sense that there's so many needs, so many avenues. But as we close up, maybe you could just let people know what your website is if they have interest in looking further, supporting it, or volunteering, or attending, right? Maybe let them know your societies. How do they find you on the internet?
So we are at worldbrainmapping.org. And we have virtual fellowship and internship for students. They can virtually work with, we have with 25 subcommittees. We have spine, neurotrauma, Alzheimer, brain cancer, and so on. In each subcommittee, we have 2 co-chairs and about 30 to 50 scientists and surgeons.
Oh, wow.
So they actually create a grassroots think tank that actually organize our convention, so what we can highlight in our convention, so these students can be part of it. And we are a membership organization, and we welcome everybody to join us.
Fantastic. Babak?
Pleasure, Professor.
You're doing great things.
Thank you. Thank you.